Alrighty. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Annuity Fundamentals. I'm Kylie Malott. Today we have the whole team with us. Well, at least part of the team. We've got Ryan Anderson and Scotty G. And so it's going to be a good discussion. And hopefully we can give you some tidbits on how to make some more money.
And today we're going to be talking to agents about, case design. We're going to be talking about some of the things, how they can really build up their business, and very kind of looking for the low-lying fruit. And when you get an opportunity, what do I do next? So let's go ahead and jump right into that here. So when you have to build a case, when you see an opportunity, what's the process you start to go through?
Well, we talk about a lot of the things at Annuity Fundamentals, right? In our training. Obviously, you're going to do all those things right with the client. You're going to do your introduction, all those have all those conversations, transition from the health to the wealth. But you come to a point where you have to define the purpose, and that's we're talking about case design. And if you don't have a purpose, then it's going to be really difficult. You don't have the client doesn't have a need for a solution to solve something in retirement. It's going to be really difficult to do a case design. So I would just pattern it off of two different things, right? So going back to the fundamental concepts, right? We talked about Ryan, Kylie, fundamental. So what do annuities do? And if you really generalize it, it's two camps. One camp is they're both insurance products, right? But the first camp, I would say they provide protected income, right? They're like insured income that you can never outlive. So that's one I guess you would say silo that an annuity operates in and provides that solution. The other one is safe growth. That's it. So when you're thinking about a case design with a client, it's probably one or two of those camps, those silos that annuities provide solutions in. It may be both, but that's the starting point. And as you have the conversations with a client, you really have to determine, okay, what is the priority here? And it's a great question to ask a client. What is your priority with this account? Would you like safe growth, or would you like safe income you can't outlive? And when I first started out in the industry, I thought the income conversation was a waste. I'm like, clients don't understand this. They have their Social Security, their pension. They don't understand withdrawal rates. They don't understand sequence of returns and how, they could run out. And it was really difficult for me to transition into a protected income concept. But I would say that this is, one area everyone starting out new with annuities should focus in. So if you're talking about something that's, protected income based, it's very easy to have that design concept run out, in that you ask them, let's talk about your income. And you have all the underlying income areas. You have their Social Security, maybe they have pension income. Well, is that enough? And they're going to ask, I don't know. So you have that conversation on what we can do is store some of this nest egg you have into protected income. And so when you have that conversation, it's we're going to fill your income gap. And that's what I would say the early buds of the case design. So what amount of income are you trying to solve, right? How much and when? And that's the biggest thing when you're talking about income, is how are you going to design a bucket of income for the client off when they need it, or most likely will need it. And if you know those answers, then you work with your marketer and they will help design a product for you and get you the best in class to make sure you solve that solution.
Now, as we're going through and we're looking at that, when I'm sitting here, when I sit down with a client, I look at them, and when I'm trying to solve the income problem, the approach that I take is I say, okay, there's two numbers that we need to consider when you're in retirement when it comes to income. One of them is your survive number. One of them is your thrive number. The survive number, what's the bare bones number you need to have to pay your mortgage if you have one, to keep the lights on, gas in the tank, maybe even just the first half of the month, to pay your medical, to keep food on the table. And we're not talking, steak and lobster. I'm talking top ramen. I always use the example, think college freshman broke. You're surviving. You are not thriving. And then the other side of that is the thrive number. How much do you need to travel to the level you want, to spoil your grandkids the way you want to really live the life and express the hobbies you have? And then there's generally, there's a gap in there as far as, so my survive number is 3,000, my thrive number is 10,000 or 5,000 and 20,000, whatever it might be, depending on the person's socioeconomic class. And then we move from there. And that number, quite often when I visit with people, it catches them. It's like, oh, I've never thought about that. What do you mean a budget or something like that? Now, we've had some experiences with that, Kylie, haven't we?
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. And it's not just like, oh, a $1,500 difference. Typically, their like survive number and their thrive number is like $2,000 to $4,000 difference. Obviously, if we're doing our job, right, we want to get them to the thrive number, right? We want them to enjoy retirement. So now it's working backwards.
Yeah, it's the whole Tom Higna thing, right? It's the paychecks and play checks. I think the other thing, that the aspect that you have to look at case design, is the income shortfall. So just a short story. So I had two clients, and they came to me. They had a pension income from their previous employment. They both worked for the same organization, and they had almost upwards of just over $250,000 in pension income a year. Now that's mostly unheard of. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong pension income. And the husband was on his second marriage. This was their only marriage. They had children together, and we started looking at the numbers. Now, it can be a play check and paycheck scenario, but when we started looking at the pension income, the majority of the pension income did come from the husband. And as we looked at it, there was no survivor benefit. So his, $130,000 in income was going to drop by more than 60% at death. And so the answer I had for the client, before I had the answer, I knew what the answer was, but I guess the question I had for the client, and I turned to the spouse and I said, how do you feel comfortable with that? And they said, no. Right. And so this was what we call, income shortfall case design. Is what are the shortfalls we expect to have? The average life expectancy in the US with surviving spouses is 5 to 7 years. So, and oftentimes that happens when you can't take an additional job. You have increasing healthcare costs. So when you look at income, you don't just look at just the flat line, thrive, or fundamental income necessity money. It's also an income shortfall. And if you don't ask those questions, you don't look at their pensions, you don't have those conversations, you'll miss it. And this, was a $670,000 annuity that we did. And I say 670 because we had to solve for that income gap in pension. And turning to the spouse and saying, okay, now we've leveled you up. Okay, we've leveled you up. And if you never need that income for the shortfall, let's say you predecease your spouse, then that turns into death benefit for the rest of your family. So watch for those when it comes to income. The shortfall is a big impact in case design. Chances are, if there's pension income we have Social Security shortfall, right? Unless our spouses, we both die at the same time, there's going to be a drop in Social Security. You don't keep both of the Social Securities. You only take higher of the two. So when you're meeting with the client and you're talking income, ask a question like this to start out your case design for your back end team. And ask a question is what are you going to do about the income when one of you passes away? You get the higher of the two, so you'll lose your 1,500, your 2,000, your 2,200. You won't keep both of those incomes. Most people, they don't even realize it exists, right? So it's an opportunity for you to share that knowledge, be a professional, give them that awareness, and also give them that protected income. So that's the low-lying fruit. Everyone, if they live on this earth, majority of everybody will have an income shortfall. The question is, are they worried about it? Okay.
Scott, I talk about that. I think about And a lot of people, their situations change from the time they retire to the time they pass away. And you talked about the income shortfall and when he passes away, they lose the pension income. I had a client one time, this is a number of years ago. His wife passed away early and then he retired. So he was single when he retired. He had a couple of annuities that he turned income on. He had a military pension and he had a federal pension. And between those, he'd done really well for himself. He was bringing in close to $10,000 a month. He remarried. His spouse, her Social Security was actually higher than his because of the way that he'd paid into the different pension and programs. But the thing about it is there was no spousal survivor benefit on that. So when he died, they were going to go from about $11,500 a month between their two incomes down to $1,500 a month. And she was a spender. And so as I sat down with them and I said, hey, we need to put something in place. And for them at that particular scenario, an annuity was not a good fit because they didn't have a large chunk of cash to put into it. It was an indexed universal life. And we went through, and so we put this piece together. We barely squeaked him in. He was like 71, something like that. We put him into gave him an IUL with as big a death benefit as we could find, and he was paying close to $1,500 a month for it. But when he died, she got a $500,000 or $600,000. I can't remember. This has been years ago. A very large settlement that we were able to then go through and convert to income. So that solution, like you said, you had an annuity opportunity there. We used an IUL in our case, but that is something that a lot of folks don't realize is the loss of Social Security, the loss of a pension. And most pensions, you don't get the whole thing when somebody passes away. That there's a real concern about a decrease in available income on a month-to-month basis down the road.
Right.
As there should be.
And
just because one person, just because one person passes away doesn't mean the bills change. You still have a house payment. You still have the lights, the water, everything else. All your bills stay the same. So when you take a cut in income like that definitely affects your quality of life, because then your funny money, right, is now being spent on your bills because your bill money just left. So solving for that income is a priority for sure.
I just met with a new potential client, and he's on a second marriage. He's got 3 to 4 kids, I think it is, step kids. He's actually engaged, but he's going to be married soon. But most of his pension income is attached to his former spouse, and he can't change it, right? And of course, he has children with that former spouse as well. And so life insurance was the best option for him because he didn't have really much nest egg. He had pension income. That was his contribution to his retirement, but he had no TSP or 401k or IRA, nothing. Right. And so when you look at it, even if there's no money there, like you're saying, the life insurance is a great option once that an income strategy. So going back to the income piece, right? So we just need to find out, what is the income shortfall, if there is any, and what are we trying to solve for? And here's the thing, if there is no income shortfall, and if there is no concern about current income, then you really need to do an itemized budget. Like you mentioned earlier, Ryan, is where it comes down to is like, what are you spending? And then there's tons of tools, free tools online. You can go in and you can look at the present value of that money. And then you can look at the future value of that money with inflation. And so when you look at all the fixed versus variable costs in retirement, the costs in retirement are that bucket of expenses is much greater than the fixed cost. There's not many things in retirement that have fixed costs that never go up, right? And so gas, electric, utility, home insurance, car insurance, right? Healthcare spending, co-pays, doctors, drugs, whatever it is, everything goes up over time. And so if they're saying there's no income gap, what do you account for the fact that government's printing more money in the last 2 years than all the history of the U.S. currency combined? And that has effect on people's retirement income. So when you look at all those things, income's a big piece of the retirement puzzle. It's what we call a ground floor of retirement planning. when you do your case design, you're providing a way for that client to have a pay raise. And that's what you refer to. It's a pay raise in retirement. You're paying yourself. Okay. And that's really important as you start looking at it. But it really is the low-lying fruit. I look back to when I first started in the industry, right? And I was working as a Medicare agent, just like many of you who are watching this podcast. And I found that it was much better to have conversations on annuities with clients in the home alongside with those conversations after I had them with Medicare. And, you know, when I realized that the conversation for income, right, was much easier to have than a conversation about growth in annuities, it was a much more complex conversation to discuss how annuities can grow. Okay. Have pars and spreads. You have that conversation, right, with a client, and you explain how it works, and they'll be like, yeah, I think I get it. And you think you've done a great job, and you can see they still don't get it, right? They still don't get it.
Yeah, totally been there.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, so what do you want to hang your hat on? Do you want to hang out your hat on being a new agent and hope, wishing, and praying that you can have a conversation with the client? They're going to understand growth and how an annuity works on growth. Or you're going to hang your hat on a conversation like, okay, I'm making X. And if I did a pension and increased my guaranteed income, protected income, that is protected by the insurance company from the reserve, right? If I could do that, and I say you're making 70,000, let's source another 30,000 of your nest egg, and it grows every year you don't take it. And once you turn it on, you'll never outlive it. That's a much easier conversation. So if I am doing my first annuity, I'm going to do it on protected income. I am. Yeah, I'm going to find that it exists.
You know, yeah, I sit there and I look at that, and that is one of the things that's really easy to go through. People understand how pensions work. I pay money in over the course of my career. When I retire, I get money back forever. They don't understand how it works. They just know that I've got a paycheck every month, and which is wonderful. And if you can explain it to them in layman's terms like that, then it clicks with folks. Now, one of the things here that we do at the Annuity Fundamentals at our website, annuityfundamentals.com, is to help agents transition from health to wealth. That is actually the whole basis for that 6-week-long class that Kylie and I teach. And we start these classes every couple of weeks, and it is training agents how to do the key 3 items of introduce themselves, proper fact finding, and get the annuity tee up. When we started in this business, and years ago, when Kylie was a brand new Medicare agent, I was her district manager, and we were working on this, we didn't start with, okay, here's an annuity, go out and try to get, growth for income. It was, all right, you've got a Medicare client, and you're going to be asking them all these health questions. You're going to ask them these income questions. And so we know where they're at. Why don't we give them an additional source of income and show them how to go through and make sure they never take a loss in the market? And that language was really nice. And it's with a brand new agent.
Powerful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was easier training you as a new agent than the training that we're retraining these other guys online, because they've got fears and habits to break. Would you agree, Kylie?
Absolutely. I mean, when people really invest and they want to change their business and get into the annuity space, they have to get uncomfortable because they're not used to getting into the money. But with the proper fact finder and the introduction, it sets up expectations, so that way you can get into the money and qualify these people. Not every Medicare person you sit down with has the means for an annuity, right? You have to qualify them. That's why you ask about money. What are you making on Social Security? Do you have a pension? Do you have a 401k? What does that look like? Paint me a picture, right? Because a lot of these people, if you ask them, a meeting or 2 later, do you know what an annuity is? They look at you like, kinda, but they really don't. So that's where we come in and we do our education, and we say, okay, there are different options in retirement. It's not just, stocks, bonds. It's not just gold and silver. Like, there are other things out there, but those are the things that they get hit with on TV. I mean, really, sit down and watch a commercial on TV, especially if you're watching the news. You're going to hear some stocks and bonds, right? You're going to hear the S&P, and then you're going to hear gold and silver. It's back. It's just like, okay, well, where's the middle ground? Where is something else? And so we bring that to their attention, really.
Yeah. And as we're talking about that, like with these agents that are out there that are like specifically the people probably listening to this podcast, because it's all about how do I move from health and life into the wealth side, that there's a fear, how do I do that? I want to do that. I don't know how to do that. And that's what we're all about. So, I mean, I'm sorry, Scott, I think I might have cut you off a second ago. I apologize for that. What were you going to say?
No, you're fine. I think where it comes into is like, we've given you with Annuity Fundamentals a lot of what we call the training wheel, training wheel tools, right? One of them is the whiteboard videos that we have. And so as you go through your client conversations and you really want to talk about growth, or you want to talk about income and protected income, all these whiteboard videos, the majority of them you're able to play them with the client and you to watch them to help them understand the concepts of it. They're all supplemental things to what you're doing in the home with the client. But when it comes down to case design, going back to that, is the second silo is really the growth conversation. So at SG Financial, we're here. I'm an investment advisor representative. So I have my securities license, which allows me to have conversations with clients on their assets. So I can go through a portfolio. When you're meeting with a client, if you're not securities licensed, you do not want to talk about the growth of a particular security. You can lose your license. So just want to be clear on that. But if you're needing that support, we're happy as a team member of Annuity Fundamentals. I'm happy to jump on, help you have that conversation with the client via Zoom, explain to them what areas in their portfolio should be targeted for, maybe they have more risk than they're willing to take in certain aspects of their portfolio. And I can have those conversations about, well, this is the heat map. This is what you have in growth if there's a market rally, and this is what you have in loss if there's a recession, right? And understanding where their risk is at through things like the RA is all part of the case design. So I find that when you start looking at the portfolio performance, then that leads into the conversation on case design on growth, right? What type of growth do you want? Going back to what you said earlier, Ryan, it's like, do you want the growth that you can never lose? Or do you want the growth that you can lose, but you can earn more maybe than outside of what an annuity can do, right? So we refer to it with our clients at SG Financial as a committed approach. Are you willing to sacrifice market growth, not having that market growth, for growth that is not market-based, meaning you never lose, you only gain? Now, that sacrifice means that these accounts are difficult to reverse, right? And we all know that with annuities. They have limited liquidity. Yeah. Once you're in them, it's difficult to reverse. If the answer from the client is, yeah, I'm fine, for safety of principle, meaning I never go up, I only go down, I'm willing to do something that's difficult to reverse because I know I don't want any part of the market. That is a growth client, okay? That's a growth client, annuity client. That's somebody that you should be putting in the market, maybe not all of the nest egg, a portion of that nest egg. And so then you articulate for the client, okay, what time frame are you looking at? Do they want to take 10% each year, free withdraw? Are they going to touch it in 10 years? Is it this legacy? These are all questions you have this conversation. And here's 2 questions on growth that I use all the time on a growth client. One that's maybe not looking for income. They're not looking for any fees on the account. Generally, those are annuities for growth. And I'll ask the question, what is the account for? What do you want it to do? What is it for? What do you want it to do? Once you ask those questions and you determine what is it for? Well, are you going to spend it? Yes or no? Very simple question. How much do you want to spend each year? Do you see yourself using this account at all? No, I never wanted to touch it. Okay. So now we're talking about growth as a death benefit. You just supplied your annuity marketer everything you need to know about that client. We put in their age, we put male or female, we put the amount of the account, whether it's IRA money, whether it's just non-qualified money, and now we have a purpose for that money. So that's more growth-based in terms of case design. No, ask the client. Those are 2 great questions to ask the client to help you know where the case design starts. We just need the tools. Like, this is the workbench moment where we have, okay, the client's age is this, they're male or female. The purpose is this. Is it income? Is it growth? Is it legacy? So that's the inner workings. That's what we need to know to do the case design. Here's the thing, Ryan and Kylie, right? We don't expect you agents to do the case design. That's why you have a back office team, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to do all of that. You give them the information. Here's the priority for the client. Here's their age, they're male or female. Here's the amount I think we're going to target. Give me the illustration. Now tell me how this helps, right? That's it. And, the goal is for that marketer is to provide you the best annuity in that class, in that priority, in that solution that the client needs to solve for. So that's the what I would say is the two pillars of like case design is it income? Is it growth, protected growth? Or maybe it's both, right? And here's the third one that I would say, and I'm going to count the 1 and 2, combining the third is right. Okay, we'll call it 3 basic pillars, right? The third pillar is long-term care from a case design standpoint. Right.
So
now hold on, Scott, before you go into
There we
long-term care, you said something a minute ago and I made a note so I wouldn't forget it. And it was, you dropped an acronym that I'm familiar with, Kylie's familiar with, but take a minute and explain. You said we use the RRA. What's the RRA and where do we find that?
So the RRA is when you do your coursework in Annuity Fundamentals, you'll get access to the Retirement Risk Analyzer. It's a 10 question survey that are scored. And then there's 2 additional questions that ask and help tee you up for the income conversation. It's, are you looking for additional protected income? And when do you need it? Those are the basic inner workings. In fact, you will get a copy of the RRA answers from that survey in your inbox when you complete it. And you can send that to your marketer and they can see, okay, when's the income needed? Okay. And what is the focus there? And so it's a great way to transition from health to wealth, do the risk tolerance, the RRA. And when you complete, we don't want to give you tools and you haven't done any training because chances are you won't use the tools. So do the trainings, then we'll unlock the RRA for you and you'll be able to use that unlimited with all your clients face-to-face. You can even send it via link to your clients and they can complete that. We found that when you do the RRA, it really increases your annuity cases. So do that consistently with your clients, and that will really measure what risk they're willing to take in their retirement. So
I think that tool is also just as beneficial to the agent as it is to the client.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when that client really sees their risk tolerance, and then when they see, okay, this is where I want my money, and this is where my money actually is, I think that's kind of just a light bulb that turns on. Is like, oh, maybe through these 10 questions, I understand like where I want to be, and that's not where I am. So how do I meet in the middle?
Yeah, it really is cool stuff. Okay, so you've told us about the 2 pillars. We got about 5 minutes here left, so let's go before we wrap up here. Tell us about the third pillar of long-term care.
So I'll start out with the short story. This is a client I just closed. So this particular client, I met them at a workshop I was doing, and he is a 73-year-old man, no children, no spouse. And he was listening to my workshop, and I came up to the long-term care conversation, and I noticed him just starting to take tons of notes, and his eyes were wide. He had $10 million in retirement accounts, and he was getting deferred comp, meaning the company that he worked for was going to pay him about $1.5 million over the course of about 5 years. And it was coming up in the next year. Well, now he's taking RMDs too soon. So he had a major tax issue. So he sat down with me and we had this conversation. There wasn't much we could do from the tax standpoint. And it didn't seem like he was that concerned about taxes. But then I finally asked, why are you here? He said he had a broker on his mutual funds and his stocks, and everything was settled. He wasn't willing to change that money over. And he said, Scott, there's something that really concerned me. And I didn't realize this was a risk for me. I'm one of 4 brothers, 3 of which are all older. I'm the youngest of the 4. and all three of them have dementia.
Mm.
And,
Wow.
and he says two of them are in a home, and the other one is lives with his spouse. They're out of state. And I said, so talk to me about what you've done to solve for long-term care spend. He says, nothing. I was just planning to spend it. Well, we looked at the accounts, and they were all basically, it just cashed everything out. He had like treasury notes and a lot of cash equivalents in his portfolio. And so this was the perfect opportunity. Now, there's few routes. You can go, life insurance, long-term care insurance. Well, he then told me he had a nerve disease in his body and he had limited mobility of half of his body. Do you think he's going to qualify for long-term care? No. Okay.
No.
No.
And if he does, he's not going to want to pay it. So this was an annuity case design. And the conversation was, let's go ahead and get the same type of growth you're experiencing in your cash. And let's carve out a portion of that for long-term care. And so we developed a solution for him with an annuity with a long-term care provision, where the money, he got additional participation in the markets and he would then pull out withdrawals out of that account over 5 to 7 years for that long-term care. And if he never needed it, he could still access the money. It took 1.5 years to close this business, but that was an $800,000 annuity. So,
Nice.
Those types of things with long-term care, you have to know the numbers. 3 out of 4 people need long-term care over the age of 65, and know those stats, learn about it. I would encourage everybody to go on genworth.com, and there's an aging survey you can do. Put in the county, the zip code, and Genworth does surveys across the country so they can properly equate the cost of long-term care, because Genworth is a life insurance company, so they need to know the expensive cost of long-term care. And so they call these long-term care facilities across the country and they survey them to find out what are the costs. And then they add inflationary measures on there. So I share this with clients. I go on Genworth, UN Aging, I think it's called. You click on the link, you type in the zip code, and you can see what the long-term care costs are for the county they live in. And then you do the math. For the first 2 years, the average, long-term care is going to last 1 to 2 years. But Alzheimer's dementia, it's 2 to 9 years. Share that with your clients. Ask them to tell a story. Do they know anybody that's had long-term care issues where they had to have someone? Chances are they do. If they don't, they're lying. Okay.
Most of them do. I'm going to say the same thing. They know. They have parents, aunts, uncles. They know somebody.
So I guess what we just covered was like 2 major pillars, and the third one is long-term care. And what generally I find with the long-term care is people will avoid that the risk exists. And I'll tell clients this: just because you think it's not going to be you, the risk doesn't go away. It really doesn't. So let's solve for this. And sometimes it's a Band-Aid, and sometimes we can, close the wound completely and eliminate the risk through an annuity solution. But sometimes they don't have the assets, right? And so sometimes it's a matter of just like carving out what they can do of their nest egg for long-term care. Something is better than nothing. And I've got tons of stories that I've experienced with clients where maybe we've got to them too late and they have a long-term care need at the doorstep. So I think if you just position yourself and from a case development standpoint on those 3 major categories, I think you're going to set yourself up for success.
Well, that is cool. Scott, I got to thank you so much for spending this time today, talking to us about these 3 pillars of case design. It has been, again, this is something that a new agent can take immediately. Going through, and if they haven't already gone through and checked out the Annuity Fundamentals training courses, those are there. Again, no cost for most agents. Just really, really good stuff. But thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. The 3 pillars, right? Long-term care, income, and growth. So these are things that we can solve for these clients that need our help. So yeah, put some comments below. We want to hear from you. Ask some questions. We're here to answer them, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.